In this lesson, we are going over solving quadratics, but a method called completing the square. So here we're going to start with these problems. Now, I've talked about this in a previous lesson, these four. However, just going back to these, so like with our first two examples, this is like using with our square root method. So notice how here we have x plus 10 in the parentheses all together, being raised to the second power. We actually need to first get rid of that exponent by taking the square root. So now by taking the square root, now I've got x plus 10, because we have canceled out our power, is equal to the square root of 25, which is positive and negative 5. So by doing that, now we have two equations to solve. We have x plus 10 is equal to 5, but we also have x plus 10 is equal to negative 5. So now as we go through and solve, we need to subtract 10, and x is equal to negative 5. We also need to subtract 10 here, right? Because we're adding 10, opposite, and x is also equal to negative 15. So x is equal to negative 5 and negative 15. So now here, same thing, but we do have a value outside of our parentheses. We are adding 12. So we need to first subtract 12 from both sides. Now we can bring down x minus 8 squared is equal to 9. Now we can take the square root to get rid of our exponent here, which brings down x minus 8, now equal to the square root of 9, positive and negative 3. So now we set up our two equations, right? Because that's two answers here. X minus 8 is equal to 3, and x minus 8 is equal to negative 3. So now as we go through and solve, I'm going to add 8, because that's the opposite, right, of subtraction. And x is equal to 11. Here again, I'm going to add 8. And x is equal to 5. So here I've got 5 and 11. Go ahead and pause the video and try the U-tries on your own. And here you go. So notice how here this was by itself, but we have that exponent on the outside. So take the square root to get rid of your exponent. Now I'm going to bring down x minus 5 is equal to plus minus 8. So when you set up to solve this, you should have set it up as x minus 5 is equal to 8, and x minus 5 is equal to negative 8. So when you go through and solve, opposite of subtraction is addition. Add 5. And x is equal to 13. Here, add 5. And x is equal to negative 3. Then here, you should have added 28 first, because it's outside and it's being subtracted. Now you bring down x plus 9 squared is equal to 49. Now you can take the square root to get rid of the exponent. Here I've got x plus 9 is equal to square root of 49 plus or minus 7. So then when you set up your equations, x plus 9 is equal to 7, and x plus 9 is equal to negative 7. So now when you go through and solve, subtract 9. So now here I've got x is equal to negative 2, subtract 9, and x is equal to negative 16. So now getting into the actual process of completing the square, and you're going to see why we did that. Now, when completing the square, we're going to start off with some of these basic examples. We need to create a perfect square trinomial. So 3 terms that we can write as a perfect square, which means there's going to be 2 things that we need to do. We're going to halve our b terms. So b is always what's connected to x. So it's ax squared plus bx plus c. We're going to always take that coefficient of x, our b. We're going to half it. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. And then we're going to take that 7 and square it. 7 squared is 49. Now, when we get to completing the square, this is the value when we have an equation that you would add to both sides of the equation. So just keep that in mind. But that's what we're going to do to get that value. We're going to have that b term to get 7 and then square it. So now we can factor. What numbers multiply to get you 49 and add to get you 14? Well, 7. So notice how here, whatever we have, that is the term here, x plus 7. 7 times 7 is 49, and 7 plus 7 is 14. So that's how we're able to write this as a perfect square. So for those who need to see that visually, this in factored form is x plus 7 times itself, x plus 7. So that's why we're able to write it as a perfect square here. So again, we're going to have our b term, -4. So -4 divided by 2 is -2. Then we need to square it. Now, even though it's a negative, two negatives multiplied still make a positive. So we're going to always add that positive. So again, what numbers multiply to get 4 and add to get -4? -2 and -2. So again, x minus 2 times itself, x minus 2. That's why we're able to write it as x minus 2 to the second power. So then the last one here, right? What do we do with 20? Divided by 2, right? So now you have 10. Then square it. 10 squared is 100. So again, what numbers are we going to be able to use here for our perfect square? 10, because 10 times 10 is 100, and 10 plus 10 is 20. So x plus 10. So now, all of this that we just did, we're going to put together now in completing the square. Now, completing the square, your equation is not going to always equal 0, because if you notice, we need to get just x terms by itself in order to complete the square. So we just need x terms together. So notice how this minus 20, we need to move out of the way. So we're going to add 20. So again, opposite operation. So really now we've got x squared plus 8x. Now leave the blank for completing the square is equal to 20. And again, whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other side. And now here we go. We need to half our b term, which is 4, and square it. 4 squared is 16. Now again, this is an equation. So what we do to one side, we must do to the other side. So we're going to add 16 to both sides to complete the square. Now we write this as our perfect square. So again, what value here? 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 plus 4 is 8. So x plus 4 squared is equal to, not 20 anymore, right? Because we added 16. 36. Now we're going to solve for x. Now this should look like those examples that we did in the very beginning. You see? So it's the same thing. We are now having to get rid of that exponent because this is all grouped together and take the square root. So now here I've got x plus 4 is equal to the square root of 36, which is positive and -6. So now we're going to set up our two equations. X plus 4 is equal to 6, and x plus 4 is equal to -6. Now we can solve for x, doing the opposite operation, right? If we're adding 4, subtract 4. So x is equal to 2. Same thing here, subtract 4. And x is equal to -10. So x is equal to 2 and -10. So let's do 2b together here. Notice how we're adding 21. We got to get just the x's here, right? So we're going to subtract 21 from both sides. Bring down x squared minus 10x, leave the blank for completing the square, is equal to -21 because we subtracted, but then again, that value for completing the square. So here we go. we're going to half our b term, which is negative 10, which gives us negative 5. So now I've got negative 5 squared. Again, negative times a negative still will give you positive. So positive 25. What we add to one side, we add to the other. So 25 is what we're going to add to complete the square. Now we can rewrite x, our perfect square here. So again, what value are we going to use? Negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5, positive 25, negative 5 plus negative 5, negative 10. Now this is equal to negative 21 plus 25, which is 4. Now we can solve just like before. Take the square root. So now this cancels out, and x minus 5 is equal to positive or negative 2. So now here we've got x minus 5 is equal to 2, and x minus 5 is equal to negative 2. Now we can go through and solve. We're subtracting 5, so now add 5 here to both sides. X is equal to 7. Here, we're going to add 5 to both sides, and x is equal to 3. So 7 and 3. So again, last one here, 2c. We need to group the x's together. So again, add 45 to both sides of the equation. Now group your x's. So x squared plus 4x, leave the blank here, is equal to 45, and then leave here what we need to add to both sides. So again, half the b term, 4 over 2 is 2, and square it. 2 squared is 4. What we add to one side, we add to the other side here. So now we can write, right, as our perfect square. So what's going to go inside? Positive 2. So x plus 2 squared is equal to 49. Now we can take the square root. Canceling out, x plus 2 is now equal to positive or negative 7. So again, setting up our two equations, x plus 2 is equal to 7, and x plus 2 is equal to negative 7. So now when you go through and solve, you're adding 2, so subtract 2, opposite operation, and x is equal to 5. Then here, subtract 2, and x is equal to negative 9. So 5 and negative 9. So go ahead and pause the video now and try these 3 U-tries on your own. And here we go. So again, you should have added the 84 to both sides to get your x terms by itself. Now you've got x squared plus 8x, leave the blank, is equal to 84, and again, blank. So now you should have halved your b term, 8 over 2 is 4, and square it, which gives you 16. What you add to one side, you needed to add to the other side. So now when you rewrite your trinomial here as a perfect square, you should have written it as x plus 4 is equal to 100. So now you can solve. Taking the square root, now you've got x plus 4 is equal to positive or negative 10. So now you've got x plus 4 is equal to 10, and x plus 4 is equal to negative 10. So then when you went through to solve and subtract 4 from both sides of the equation, you should have gotten x is equal to 6 and negative 14. Now in 2b, the term was already here by itself. So you could just go through and start with completing the square. You have half, which is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is just positive 1. So this is x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 15 plus 1, right? So we're adding 1 to both sides to complete the square. Then you should have written what goes inside your parentheses here to write it as a perfect square. -1. X minus 1 squared is equal to 16 from 15 plus 1. Now you can go through and start solving for x by taking the square root, and you've got x minus 1 is equal to positive or -4. So now you've got x minus 1 is equal to 4, and x minus 1 is equal to -4 here. So now adding 1 to both sides of the equation, because that's the opposite of subtraction, you should have gotten x is equal to 5 and -3. And then for the last you try, you needed to move that 77 over, right? So subtract 77 from both sides. So you have x squared minus 18x, then having your blank here is equal to -77. And again, that blank here for the value that completes the square. So when you have, you should have gotten -9 because that's -18. Squared though will still give you positive 81. So 81 is what we add here to both sides. So now you can write this as a perfect square, which in this case is x minus 9 times itself, is equal to 4. Now we can solve. Take the square root, canceling out. X minus 9 is equal to plus minus 2 here. So now here you've got your two equations of x minus 9 is equal to 2 and x minus 9 is equal to -2 here. So when you go through to solve, adding 9, right, because that's the opposite of subtraction, adding 9 to both sides, you get x is equal to 11 and x is equal to 7.